Hi guys, Marvin here from TechBroll.com, where we do unboxings, reviews, and sexy B-rolls. And today we're going to do an unboxing and review of the new Rakk Maris Pro case fans. So this is the upgraded version of the popular Rakk Maris case fans, and we're going to take a look at everything that you need to know about this. So with that being said, let's get into it. Alright guys, so right here I have the packaging for the Rakk Maris Pro case fans. So in front and back we have here the preview of the product as well as the Maris Pro branding. So these case fans are compatible with MSI's Mystic Light, Gigabyte's RGB Fusion 2.0, and of course Asus Aura Sync. So at the side of the box right here we have all the key specifications of the Rakk Maris Pro. But basically what's important here, it now features 2000 RPM for the max fan speed, and it also features 2.56mm H2O for the air pressure. For airflow, it supports or features 45.21 CFM, which is not that great to be honest, but later we'll see how it performs. But at least the noise levels are only around 23.2 decibels. So at both sides here, we have the specifications. So let's see what comes in the package. So opening the box, the first thing you'll notice is a separate plastic right here, which I guess have all the accessories for these case fans. And next, we have here 3 mounting screws for your case, but I don't see here any radiator screws, but I guess that will come with your AIO. So here's the Rakk Maris Pro case fan. So we have 3 of them on this packaging. So in front of the case fans right here, we have the Rakk logo at the center. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 fan blades, which are translucent, as well as a translucent lining around the case fans for the illumination. So this RGB, like I said earlier, supports MSI's Mystic Light, RGB Fusion 2.0, and Asus Aura Sync. So we have 4 rubber feet on both sides. We also have a Rakk logo at the other side. So both sides have a Rakk logo on the center. So as you can see here, we have the translucent fan blades, Rakk logo on both sides, 4 rubber anti-vibration pads on both sides, and then we have here a nice braided cable. So the cable is braided and the length is substantial. Let me just check the length here. So it has a proprietary connector right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pin proprietary connector. So you cannot use this alone to connect with your motherboard. So you will need the fan hub here inside this accessory box. So let's take a look at what comes in this little plastic here. So here's what we have inside this little accessory plastic. So first we have here the remote control. So we have here the infrared remote control with all the lighting modes, and it also comes with a plastic protection here for the battery, so that it will not consume when you're not using it. So we also have here a nice Velcro strap. So this is for mounting the hub at the back of your case, since it doesn't have a screw or any mounting bracket. So this is the one that you're going to use. And then we have here the fan hub. So here's a quick look around the fan hub. So we have the reset switch port and the data port. And then we have the 4 fan port, as well as an LED port, and as well as on the other side, and of course the cable for the SATA. Aside from that, we also have inside the packaging the reset switch adapter. So aside from the reset switch, we also have here the RGB and fan connectors that will go through your motherboard as well as here on the fan hub. And that's pretty much it when it comes to the unboxing and package contents of the Rakk Maris Pro. The only thing that I don't like about this is the proprietary connector. Like I said, you cannot use this alone with your motherboard or any other connector, because it is only compatible with the Rakk Maris Pro fan hub. So make sure you don't lose this or you don't break this, because you will not be able to use these case fans. So Rakk actually sent me another set of Rakk Maris Pro case fans. These are individual case fans. So I have a total of 6 of them here. Perfect for my plan to transfer my components from my Rakk Flow to the Rakk Sinaya for the full review. So thank you very much, Rakk, for sending these case fans. I really appreciate it. So this is perfect for mounting 3 on the top for exhaust and 3 in front for intake. So I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to install this on my Rakk Flow as well as on the Rakk Sinaya, and I'll provide you guys with benchmarks for thermals, noise levels, and all that you need to know about these case fans, lighting, RGB effects, and all that. Alright, so see you in a while. Alright guys, so I've already removed the case fans that I previously have on the Rakk Flow. So I did a quick benchmark earlier with this configuration for both AIDA64 and for gaming with the Assassin's Creed Origins, so that we can compare the performance of these case fans with the Rakk Maris Pro before I finally transfer my components to the Rakk Sinaya chassis. So yeah, so basically we're going to compare the performance of the ID Cooling DF-12025 with the Rakk Maris Pro inside the Rakk Flow. Alright guys, so I'm done installing the Rakk Maris Pro inside the Rakk Flow. Here's how it looks. The installation is pretty easy, no sweat. Now I just have to figure out the connectors, because like I said earlier, the connectors of the Rakk Maris Pro are proprietary with a 5-pin connector. So here's how the fans look like in front of the Rakk Flow. So let me just figure out how to configure the case fans with this Rakk Maris Pro hub right here, and I'll get back to you. Okay, so let's figure this out. So this is the Rakk Maris Pro hub, and we have all the cables here hanging behind the case. Unfortunately, there is no manual for the Rakk Maris Pro, at least for the packaging that I have right here. So we have the Rakk Maris Pro hub. I assume we'll just have to connect all the case fans here, all of 6 of them here, and then let me just check. So data, let me just check the connectors here. So I guess for the data we'll use this little 4-pin connector right here for the data. Unfortunately, like I said, there's no manual, so we're just gonna wing this one. Alright, so it's in there. And then for the reset switch, we have a small cable right here for the reset switch. I assume we'll have to put it here. So RGB header, fan header, and VDG. So if you have a VDG RGB header, this is the one that you're going to use. So let me just install this. So we also have the SATA connector. So the hub itself is powered with SATA. So let me just install this on the Rakk Flow. Alright guys, so I've already installed the case fans on the Rakk Maris Pro, as you can see here. So we have 3 on this side and another 3 on this side. By the way, I forgot to tell you on the unboxing about these buttons. So we have LED speed, mode, and fan speed. So you can basically control the case fans right off the fan hub. Now, I won't bother installing the RGB header on the motherboard because RGB fusion is quite basic. So I will just choose the case fans using the fan hub right here and the remote control, because you'll get a lot more different lighting effects compared to just using the RGB header on your motherboard and configure it on the software. But you can use that if you're into that, but I'm not a fan of RGB fusion, to be honest. So I've also connected the SATA connector on one of the SATA connector going to the power supply, so that we have a power for that. And then, like I said, we have here the data and the reset switch. So I'm going to install that. Alright, so Rakk Flow actually has a switch for RGB. So we have here the reset switch built in on the front panel. So we have to connect the reset switch here. I'm not sure about the polarity, but let's go with it. Alright, there you go. So for the purpose of this video, like I said, I'm not going to use the RGB connector to the motherboard, but instead I'm just going to use the remote controller for the lighting effects, since we have more available lighting effects on that. But we're going to connect the fan header or the fan connector to the fan header on our motherboard, so that we can use the same fan curves for our thermals and benchmarks. Alright, so without doing proper cable management, I was able to close the back of the case, because that is vital for our thermal benchmarks. Now I'm going to do the same benchmarks that I did with the ID Cooling DF-12025. Alright guys, so moment of truth. I hope all the case fans works and will have illumination. There you go. So it looks like all of them are functioning well. Alright guys, so right here I have the remote controller for the Rakk Maris Pro. So we have a motherboard sync button right here. I assume this is the one that you're going to use if you will opt to connect the RGB connector to your motherboard's RGB header. And we have here Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, Q5. I assume that would be the different lighting effects. And then we have the fan auto, fan plus minus, LED speed. We have a mode up, hold, mode down, lock, and of course we have the on and off switch on the upper right. And lastly, we have the RGB buttons right here. So we're going to test all the buttons on this controller right now. So if you press motherboard sync, I assume that would be the case if you want to control your lighting effects using the software, for example, Gigabyte's RGB Fusion 2.0, MSI's Mystic Light, and of course, Asus Aura Sync. So if you press motherboard sync button again, you will be able to toggle it using the remote controller. So Q1, we have these lighting effects. So it's pretty much the same animation, just different color combinations. So Q2, the same thing, same lighting effects, different color combination. Q3, there you go. Q4, this one is breathing color spectrum. And then Q5, and you can also use the LED speed to adjust the animation speed of the lighting effects. There you go. And then of course we have the mode button up, which I think we'll just cycle through the different lighting effects, as you can see here, and as well as the mode button down. So like I said, you have a ton of lighting effects just by using the remote control, even more so than what you will have with the motherboard software, because they are quite limited. The only benefit that you can get with motherboard software is that you can sync all the lighting effects of your components. Like you can also use audio visualizers, but for me, using the remote control with a ton of lighting effects options is much better than using the software. So we also have, of course, on and off, and you can also pause a certain animation by pressing hold, as you can see there. So RGB, of course, just you can toggle the different RGB color, primary colors. So that's pretty much it, guys, for the lighting effects. I'm going to benchmark this. I'm going to close the case and do some benchmarks for the thermals and, of course, the sound levels. Alright, so I'll get back to you guys. Okay, guys, so I actually decided to connect the RGB connector to my motherboard's RGB header so that I can show you guys the motherboard sync button, because I don't want to say something that I haven't really tested. So yeah, so pressing the motherboard sync, as you can see here, if you connect the RGB connector to your motherboard's header, it will sync up. So as you can see, my other PC components are color orange. If you press motherboard sync again, you'll be able to control the lighting effects using the remote control. So that's one nifty feature for the Rakk Maris Pro fan hub that I really like. So basically, you can control everything. You have a lot of flexibility when it comes to lighting effects for both motherboard sync and remote control. But not only that, you also have the reset switch that I showed you earlier. So here's it, guys. So you have option to toggle the different lighting effects using the reset button, providing that you connect the reset switch connector to the Rakk Maris Pro fan hub. So there you go. You have a lot more options. So you have reset button, you have the remote controller, you have your motherboard sync button. So as you can see, there are a lot of options for you to configure or set up the Rakk Maris Pro fan hub, not only for lighting effects but for controlling the fan speed as well. So right now I'm still trying to figure out if I can connect the fans to a PWM header so that I'll be able to control the fan speed using the motherboard instead of the controller. So I'll get back to you guys once I finally figure that out. So just a quick update, guys. So I can't seem to figure out the PWM control of the Rakk Maris Pro case fans. So I've already connected the 4-pin PWM connector on a system fan header, as you can see here. So it is connected to the data port of the Rakk Maris fan hub, but it is not detected, or the fan speed is not detected, as you can see here. So there's no RPM readout on any of the system fan headers. which shouldn't be the case since I've already connected the Rakk Maris Pro fan hub to a 4-pin PWM fan header on our motherboard. So I'm not sure what's happening here, but I'll try to figure out later. And I need to figure that out actually, because if I want to do benchmarks, thermal benchmarks, I need to be able to figure out the PWM so that it will be the same with the DF-12025 that I am comparing this fan with. So yeah, I'll get back to you in a couple of minutes, guys. Right? Alright guys, so I'm back, but unfortunately I still wasn't able to figure out the PWM mode of the Rakk Maris Pro. So I've already connected the 4-pin fan connector to my motherboard's fan header, one of the system fan headers, but it's still not detected on the software or even on the BIOS. So I think I'll just give up for now since it's taking too much time. Let me know in the comments below, especially for those who are using the Maris Pro already. Have you figured out the PWM mode for the fan hub of the Rakk Maris Pro, or is it working for your end? Because for me it's not. So for our benchmarks, I'll just do two tests. One is for the low RPM mode and the other one is the high RPM mode of the Rakk Maris Pro using the remote control. So for idle, I'll just use the low RPM mode, and for load, which is the IDA 64, and for gaming, I'll just use the maximum RPM or high RPM mode of the Rakk Maris Pro. So I think that's the best thing that I can do right now since I wasn't able to figure out the PWM mode of the Rakk Maris Pro. So let's get into the benchmarks. Okay, so one last try at trying to configure the Rakk Maris Pro case fans using the included fan hub. So I tried following the number sequence on the fan hub right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, just in case there is a proper daisy chaining sequence required for these case fans. But unfortunately, after doing that, the case fans or the fan speeds are still unable to be detected by the software, either through Gigabyte's Windows software or even at the BIOS. So this is actually quite frustrating, especially the fact that there is no included user manual on the packaging, at least for the one that I got. But I'm not sure if there is a user manual for the normal packaging that you guys are going to get. But if there's no manual, Rakk Gears, please include a proper user manual, especially for products like this that have proprietary connectors, because for someone who already know how to build a PC like myself, I still have difficulties on configuring the PWM mode for this fan hub, if there is actually a PWM mode for this. But for other features like manual fan speed control, animation speed control, RGB lighting effects, and motherboard sync, it was easy to configure except for the PWM mode of the fans, which is actually quite vital if you're going to use your system dynamically without having to worry about setting up the fan speed manually. So yeah, aside from that, I don't have any other problems with the Rakk Maris Pro. But like I said, a user manual could have been better and is very vital for a proprietary interface like this. Alright guys, so another quick update. I just finished benchmarking the Rakk Maris Pro inside the Rakk Hawani Flow. So instead of doing two separate tests for the low profile and the high profile pre-configured RPM or fan speed using the remote controller, what I did is I used the low profile for the idle test, and then I used the high profile for the benchmarks or stress test and gaming. So that basically simulates the fan curve that I used for the DF-12025, since I cannot seem to figure out the PWM control for the Rakk Maris Pro case fans. So yeah, I tried plugging in or connecting the 4-pin fan connector to the CPU opt header on my motherboard, but to no avail. I still wasn't able to control the fan speed of the case fans using the software or BIOS. So I think at this point, I'm really ready to give up with configuring the PWM control for the Rakk Maris Pro. Alright guys, so I'm done tallying the results, so let's check it out. The first test is a 10-minute idle test. The temperatures are captured via hardware info 64. Alright, so for this test, I tried my best to make the ambient temperature as close as possible between tests. And as you can see, the results are actually quite close between the Rakk Maris Pro and the ID cooling DF-12025. With the Rakk Maris Pro reaching a 55.1 maximum temperature and an average of 41.8. Now, during load, which is a 30-minute IDA 64 stress test, the Rakk Maris Pro reached 58.1 at max with an average of 49.4. And as you can see, it is pretty close again with the DF-12025 from ID Cooling. Next test is for gaming. I used the Assassin's Creed Origins benchmark test for this, and the Rakk Maris Pro reached only 54.6 at max with an average of 50.8 degrees Celsius. So as you can see, it is also close with the DF-12025. And then the next test is for the graphics card. This is just a similar test, but we captured the details or the stats for the graphics card. So the Rakk Maris Pro reached 46 maximum for my Zotac 1070 Mini with an average of 45 degrees. And as expected, it is also close with the ID Cooling DF-12025. Next is during load, which is the same 30-minute IDA 64 stress test, with the Rakk Maris Pro reaching 75 degrees for my Zotac 1070 Mini and an average of 59 degrees. So as you can see, the results are almost identical between the Rakk Maris Pro and the ID Cooling DF-12025. And of course, for gaming, the same thing, using Assassin's Creed Origins benchmark, with the Rakk Maris Pro reaching 75 degrees for my Zotac 1070 Mini with an average of 65. And as you can already tell, again, it is almost identical with the ID Cooling DF-12025 with just differences with the minimum, but I think that is negligible because the important thing here is the average. And last but not the least, we have the noise levels. Alright, so let's test the noise levels of the Rakk Maris Pro inside the Rakk Hawani Flow. So the first test is using the low profile or the low RPM profile using the remote. Alright, so the next test is using the high profile or high RPM profile using the remote. So this test is with the 6 case fans installed on the Rakk Hawani Flow with the front panel and the side panel removed. Alright guys, so right now we're going to test the ID Cooling DF-12025 for noise levels. So I currently have 6 of them installed on the Rakk Hawani Flow. I didn't bother installing or connecting the RGB connectors because it doesn't matter here. So for the low RPM mode of the Rakk Maris Pro, we're going to simulate that using the quiet preset using the Auro Smart Fan 5 software. And for the high RPM profile of the Rakk Maris Pro, we're going to use the full speed preset for the ID Cooling DF-12025. Alright, so first, quiet mode. Alright, and then now full speed. So just to sum it up guys, the Rakk Maris Pro reached 41.6 decibels at minimum and 53.9 decibels at max, while the ID Cooling DF-12025 reached only 37 decibels at minimum, but a bit louder at maximum at 56.3 decibels. Alright guys, so that's about it with the test results. As you can see here, like I said earlier, the results are quite close between the Rakk Maris Pro and the ID Cooling DF-12025. And if we check out on these graphs, as you can see here, the ID Cooling seems to be a little bit hotter when it comes to the maximum temps, but they are almost the same when it comes to the average, which is the most important thing here. And I think at the end of the day, the results here are not that significant and it will just boil down to your personal preference when it comes to the aesthetics. So if you want an RGB case fans with a ring type illumination, then you can choose the Rakk Maris Pro. But if you want an RGB case fan that has the illumination a little bit focused on the fan blades, then you can choose the ID Cooling DF-12025. So yeah, at the end of the day, it will just boil down to your personal preference. And when it comes to the noise levels, I think for me, it's not that significant as well. So yeah, I can easily recommend any of these case fans. The Rakk Maris Pro is pretty decent. I just don't like the fact that it has proprietary cables and a very confusing fan hub without a user manual. But once you're over that and you were able to configure it, it is pretty easy to use. And it's actually pretty nice that you can sync your case fans to your motherboard or use the remote control without having to remove cables and whatnot. You just have to simply push a button. And yeah, there are a lot of lighting effects built in on the remote, fan speed control, LED speed control, which is pretty awesome. Now, the ID Cooling DF-12025 is a little bit universal, more easy to use for any type of build, easily add other case fans from other brands. So yeah, like I said, at the end of the day, it will just boil down to your personal preference as both of these fans are very decent. And there you have it, guys. Thank you for watching. Make sure to check the full article link below. Huge thanks to Rakk Maris for sending this in. You can get this from their partner stores as well as on their official website. I really appreciate your continued support, Rakk Maris, and this is perfect again for my Rakk Sinaya gaming case. So thank you for watching. Subscribe if you like this, and see you next time. Oh, by the way, don't forget to subscribe to our second Pinoy TechBroll channel so that you'll be able to keep up with behind the scenes, vlogs, Tagalog unboxings, and all that. So thank you for watching. Subscribe if you like this, and see you next time. Have a great day.